If I told you this painting was made from tree bark, would you believe it? I'm not exaggerating, nor am I making this up. What we're filming and talking about this time is an ancient craft, birch bark painting. To better understand the details of birch bark painting and how the artisans work their magic to turn ordinary bark into something extraordinary, I traveled to Fuyuan. Located at the easternmost tip of China, this city is not just where the first rays of sunlight touch the country. Hidden in this city, which faces Russia across the river, is an ancient tradition that breathes with the forest: birch bark art. Fortunately, I found a master of this craft, Master Gu Shiming. I am a representative inheritor of Heilongjiang Province's intangible cultural heritage, birch bark painting. My name is Gu Shiming. Let me introduce this painting to you. This painting uses a pasting method and follows the style of traditional Chinese painting. Within the ink wash brushwork, there are both traditional elements. For example, the pine trees and the cranes at the front, these are all traditional elements. The rocks in the background contain some innovative elements. They are made using the outer bark of the birch tree. The nearby leaves and the crane's feathers, on the other hand, are cut from the inner bark. The tree trunk is made from the outer bark. The entire painting uses both inner and outer bark, which gives the work a more three-dimensional and lifelike appearance. I can understand using the outer bark, but I'm curious. How is the inner bark made into leaves and feathers? So the master gave a live demonstration of how pine needles are made. Pine needles and feathers are both made from the inner bark, while the rocks use the outer bark. Now we are going to cut the leaves. There should be spacing between the branches and leaves. Small leaves, once dyed with color, can be glued onto the painting. Things like squirrels, the leaves on the trees, and the leaves on the Great Wall, all of them are cut out this way. Teacher Gu said that birch bark is actually quite versatile in style. It can be used for traditional Chinese painting, oil painting, and more. The most impressive thing is its three-dimensional quality. The image you see changes depending on the angle. This one is being prepared for an oil painting, a birch bark oil painting. The glued part here has come loose, so I'm going to reattach it. You can paint directly onto the bark. See, this is what the finished painting looks like. It's a small oil painting made from birch bark. There are so many pieces like this. At this point, I began to truly appreciate that the natural texture of the bark is the first draft gifted by nature itself. But a new question arose in my mind. Why choose birch bark for painting? So Teacher Gu took me deep into the forest to search for birch trees. And along the way, I also came to understand why birch bark is used as the raw material for this art. You see, the inside of this piece of birch bark has already rotted away, leaving only a layer of oil on the outside. Teacher Gu said that due to current vegetation protection efforts, finding a suitable piece of birch bark for crafting has become more difficult than before. Let's step into the workshop together and see how birch bark is reborn. To create a piece of art, the inner pulp must first be removed, leaving only the toughest and purest outer layer. After a softening treatment, the bark becomes flexible and easy to shape. Some works require coloring or heat burning to give them a richer visual language and sense of vitality. Knowing how to layer and piece together the bark to create depth and dimension in the image tests the artist's overall control over the creative process. This ancient craft is also being passed down and carried forward by young hands. Teacher Gu said, Since you've come all this way, you might as well give it a try yourself. What looks simple at first turns out to be far more difficult once you've experienced it firsthand. Mark this spot with a pencil so you can find the location later. Make sure to brush evenly here. For large areas that need to be glued, apply glue to both sides. When the glue is no longer tacky to the touch, the bark won't fall off once placed. It will adhere more firmly. Next, continue splicing at this spot. You can see that the rocks and mountain ridges are starting to take shape. Then, keep making adjustments to achieve the best effect, removing any excess bark. This is essentially using the natural texture of birch bark to create a kind of painting technique, similar to a method used in traditional Chinese painting. The rocks made directly from birch bark look even more lifelike. From a distance, they appear softer and more ethereal. Up close, they become increasingly real and detailed. After countless trials and meticulous craftsmanship, the birch bark finally completes its magnificent transformation. The life of a piece of birch bark begins with reverence for nature and the act of discovery. Each exquisite birch bark painting is more than just a work of art. It is the eternal preservation of forest memories, the spiritual totem of nomadic peoples, a natural poem carved by time, and a perfect embodiment of the harmonious coexistence between humanity and nature. Yet, like many precious forms of intangible cultural heritage, the legacy of birch bark painting faces challenges. Behind every piece lies a lifetime of dedication from the master artist, along with the unwavering passion of young apprentices. Heritage needs to be seen, understood, and loved. This bark art, born in the easternmost frontier of China, deserves to take flight into the hearts of more people.